Okay. Welcome to the Finance Committee for the Gary Common Council. We are continuing our discussion of the 2021 budget. We have before us CPO 2020-50, CPO 2020-51, CPO 2020-57, as well as CPO 2020-67. Joining us this evening is our committee chair, Councilwoman Mary Brown of the 3rd District, as well as Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell of the 5th District, members of the Finance Committee. We also have Common Council members, Councilman Ron Brewer at large, Councilwoman Ty Atkins of the 4th District, Councilman Cozy Weatherspoon of the 2nd District, and I believe that is all. I did want to acknowledge Mr. Bill Outlar, who is working with the Finance Committee and the Council as an advisor as we go through the budget that is before us. I see that he is on the call as well as our Council Attorney, Mr. Renzer Williams. So I think maybe before we start diving in, if we could kind of go through the schedule that is before us. I know we have a few pieces to it, as well as a special meeting that's likely going to be on November 2nd. I wanted to see if Attorney Colvin, if you could go through sort of broadly speaking what we're looking at in terms of obviously what we're doing tonight, but the public hearing and then the special meeting.
Certainly. We are, of course, having a committee meeting tonight. There will be a public hearing on the budget on October 20th. There has to be a 10-day time span between the public hearing and the date of passage, which brings us to about November 1st, which falls on a Sunday. So we're allowed to have a special meeting if the council so desires on November 2nd to pass the budget. There'll be a few days after that the Controller's Office will be able to make adjustments, if there are any, to the budget, and then enter the budget into Gateway for the Department of Local Government Finance.
Thank you, Attorney Colvin. Do any members have questions about that process as outlined?
So, Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
so what we're saying is if we have a special meeting on the 2nd, and if there's changes, the controller will have enough time to make those changes to submit. It's not until midnight. I thought it was midnight that the budget has to be in.
It has to be passed by November 2nd, not entered into the system.
How long do you have to enter it in the system if there's a
about 5 days?
Oh, okay.
But the idea, though, is that if there are going to be any changes, they should be a part of your final adoption process. So between now, well, actually the public hearing and November 2nd, whatever you pass on the 2nd, you should have made your changes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about our process and the timeline?
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams?
Yes, this is to Attorney Colvin. This is first for me. In fact, I thought the deadline has always been November 1st.
November 1st is the Sunday, though.
I understand. Do we have something in writing that from local board government finance that telling us that we can do this? Where are you getting information that we can wait to November 2nd?
Just simply by state law that says if your deadline falls on a weekend, then you have until the next calendar day. But I can get that for you, and I can certainly get it even from the State Board of Accounts or anybody else would like.
No, very good. I trust your reading of the statute. It's the first impression in my several years where that has occurred. I thought that was a firm
Generally,
deadline.
it doesn't fall on a weekend.
Okay.
So we've not really had an occasion to figure that out, but there have been other instances where we've had deadlines, state deadlines that fell on a weekend where we were able to submit whatever it was that we were trying to submit at the next calendar day. The next business day, I should say.
And one last question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Why was there any hesitance or residency with the 27th? So we're not up to such a close deadline.
With the 10-day deadline, we don't have between the public hearing. That's not 10 days between the 20th and the 27th.
And you'd already noted, okay, you'd already published the public hearing.
Before, yes.
Okay, I got you. I
We had
understand.
published a public hearing notice for our last council meeting.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
I think one of the issues too is the state of the city. We wanted to have that prior to the budget vote. And I believe that's October 30th. Is that correct, Attorney Colvin?
Yes.
Do we have a time of day for that?
Location.
I don't have a time, sir.
Okay. Right. Any other, I guess one question I would ask, there is a possibility that there could be an amendment to this budget as proposed. And I suppose we would have to do that on all three readings in order to accomplish that, given the schedule that we have before us. Attorney Williams, that's correct, right? So for example, let's say at the next council meeting on the 20th, or at the special meeting on November 2nd, if a member or a group of members are sponsoring an amendment to the budget, it would have to pass all three readings in order for us to remain on schedule.
Not necessarily. It won't be the all three readings is when an issue is before the council for the first time. It won't be before the council. It would simply be an amendment to the existing ordinance.
Gotcha.
Because of that, my interpretation of the statutes, it would not require in all three readings, just a simple majority vote on and of course, passage of the amendment by substitution.
Right. Okay. It would just make, we would probably, I know we tend to be careful with our floor amendments, but given the, the need to make, obviously everything needs to be accurate, but especially with numbers that are going to be entered in the gateway, we want, if an amendment were to come forward and to pass, we would ideally like to have that in writing. So I think
correct.
that any member or members who are considering an amendment to it, we would want to have that ready on the 20th or on the 2nd, so that at least everyone can see it, given how quickly things are going to happen after this, basically on the 2nd, because that'll be here before we know it. I just wanted to note that. Any other questions or concerns about our timeline? Okay.
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Did we get the paperwork about the residents of the city of Gary that work for the city?
I have not received that. I will defer to Attorney Colvin on that.
And I just got it and I can send it by email now.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was basically the list of anyone who's not in compliance with
Yes.
the residency. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Barnes Caldwell. Any other members have questions about our timeline or process? Okay. So I think what we should do is, as we go one by one, maybe Attorney Colvin, if you could provide us with a brief overview of kind of the general thrust of the ordinance, and certainly of the amendments as of October 6, 2020, the particular changes that were made. We'll start with 2020-50, which is an ordinance appropriating monies for the purposes of defraying the expenses of the general parks, COET, CEDAT, CCI, CCD, MBH, LRS, fire pension, and police pension, tax-based funds of the city of Gary, Indiana, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2021, and ending December 31, 2021, including all outstanding claims and obligations, and fixing a time when the same shall take effect. So we will start there. with your overview, and then we can have questions from members.
Well, actually, 2020-50 is the operating budget,
Right.
and many of the changes that may have occurred in 51 and carried over to 50. So if, with your indulgence, perhaps we should do it together? Is that?
Oh, that's fine, absolutely. Because
Okay.
51 is just for the public. 51 is the ordinance approving salaries
Yes.
for the employees of the city of Gary's general parks, COIT, MVH pension, and fire tax-based funds for the
Right.
calendar year 2021. Thank you.
Just as a brief overview, CPO 2020-51 is the salary ordinance for 2021, and CPO 2020 is the operating budget. In CPO 2020-51, the salary ordinance, we've done a couple of things. One, we included the additional information to show what the 2020 budget was, what the approved budget was. We've also included a column for those departments where individuals may be receiving a stipend from the sanitary district, although I think it's in 603, if I'm not mistaken, the community investment department. There's also a column for individuals who receive stipends from the rental rehab program. I'm sorry, rental inspection program. So that's listed as well. As we have gone, since this budget has gone through a number of hands, we have gone through and looked at all of our calculations once again. And this amendment made sure that our calculations were correct. So there were some calculation errors in here that we made sure that the bottom line's balanced. We had a couple of requests from individual department heads or elected officials where they wanted to.
Excuse me, please proceed. I think we have a screen sharing that's happening. I think your screen is being shared.
My screen?
I think Councilwoman Brown's screen. Okay, now we're back. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We had a screen sharing issue. All right.
Where there were issues where individual department heads may have wanted to make a change in a particular item in their departments. The clerk made a change so that her 2020 budget mirrored her 2021 bottom line. So that's included. We've also caught a few typographical errors and also made some changes with regard to those kind of errors in the fire department budget. We did recalculations in the police department. So overall, the amended budget really contains corrections. I think when I presented at the last council meeting, the last finance committee meeting, the finance department's budget, you didn't have the proper budget before you because we had proposed some changes in that department, for example, a deputy controller. And I don't believe that the budget you had in front of you at that time included that position. So those kinds of issues have been addressed. Overall, I'll just say again, just for the record, the 2021 budget is a budget that tries to address our projection that we will have a reduction of almost $3 million in terms of revenue between 2020 and 2021. So in general, that's my overview.
Can you, I'm sorry, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you say something, I guess, broad strokes about what the total amount of the budget is in terms of what we are requesting? We're maximizing the levy, I'm sure.
Yes.
What is that number? And maybe just some broad strokes thoughts about how much of that is for public safety. I think it's just good for the general public to have some, and for us
Okay.
to have a handle on those numbers.
think I have my totals in here. If you just give me just one second.
No, no problem.
Our general fund budget, the total is 54 million. I think it's 54,500,000.
54 million and 500,000.
Yes, and I'm trying to see if I'm pulling up the right page because it's in your package, I think. Our total. When the state looks at our overall revenue projections, they look at not only our proposed 2020 budget, but also whether or not we have any revenue that we'll be able to carry over from the previous year. So one of the things that we have to do is to project not only what the revenue amounts will be, but also if we think we'll have some money left over. So in our particular case, we believe we'll have about $500,000 that we'll be carrying over from 2020 to 2021. And then we'll add to that the revenues that we believe we'll be receiving, which is at 54,054,500, so that we can come out overall to the amount that we actually believe that we can support in terms of revenue. The public safety budgets, the fire department is about 11 million, and the police department is close to 9 million. So it's about $20 million, maybe a little bit more.
So that represents about 35%-ish. They're not even that much, actually.
In 101 General. The fire and police department also have additional officers and firefighters that they have that are being funded out of our county income tax. There are 30 officers in each of those two departments for fire and police. So that's an additional $6 million each.
Okay, so 12, 23. So we're really talking about almost $32 million roughly for police and fire. And just real quickly, because I know other members have questions, and I don't want to hog up time, let other people go through. But the sale leaseback repayments. So is that, and this is my ignorance, I'm first time at this, is that built into the budget? Do we put that somewhere in there that this is debt repayments, or how does that work?
The repayment of it is built into the budget. The revenue, and I'd like to speak to that for just a moment. Originally, I believe the concept was that once the sale leaseback was finalized, there would be a $5 million I'll say escrow account that will be able to be used for expenses going forward. As it turns out, because the 2020 budget was over budget, the actual $5 million has ended up being incorporated into the 2020 budget. So we're spending it now. So there isn't any reserve at all from that sale leaseback. What we have done is incorporated the lease payments that we have to pay, to repay the dollars into our debt schedule. So that's included in our overall budget.
Because there was going to be an intercept, I think, like from the treasurers.
That was the original idea as well. They were supposed, when I say they, I mean the trustees, were originally supposed to intercept the dollars from the county, from the COID, and any other sources that we had, the LDA as well. But as it turns out, the county has said that they will not do that. So we make monthly lease payments to them.
And those are approximately how much?
400, two different sources. One source is like 404,000 a month. The other is somewhere close to that.
So
and the residual, whatever is left over, is given back to us from the trustee.
So it's $404,000 a month?
Yes,
Okay, in total.
yes.
Okay,
Well, actually, no, it's 800,000 in total.
and that's based on, and just refresh my memory, and I'm sorry to ask you all this, but that's
And I'm
based.
hoping I'm telling you this, I'm trying to give you as accurately as I can off the top of my head in terms of.
Okay, I understand, because that would be roughly $9.6 million over the course of a year.
Mhm.
That seems like a lot, given the total,
$40 million.
but the term of the
But we
sale.
do get money back, so 450 we get back.
Okay, because I think the term of it, I know there were some adjustments made before the deal actually closed.
Yes,
But that would just seem like a high total amount, but I don't
I can
want to,
give you a better idea, sir. I don't
Okay.
want to speak off the top of my head.
nope, no problem. Other members, we can get back to that. Other members have questions?
Mr. President, I have some questions.
Councilwoman Atkins?
I have a couple of clarification questions that I wanted to get clarity on. So I'm looking at, are we only sticking to CPO 2020-51, or I can ask on both?
Both.
Okay. So I had a question related to, I think this is on the operating budget
Amen.
for the mayor's department. There was an increase of $15,000 for professional services.
Yes,
Can you give me some information as to the justification for that increase?
the increase was based on current spending. In other words, the amount was increased by our current level of spending. Current year spending, I should say.
Current year spending. Okay.
Mhm.
Could we get
But,
information?
given that the overall budget was reduced by almost $30,000, we thought we could support that.
Okay. So is there a way that you could, I'm interested in just knowing what currently is allocated under professional services under this particular department at this time?
I think so.
Since it's-
Councilwoman Atkins, can you restate which, I missed that, which line item we're referring to?
Sure. So this is under, this would be under your operating budget. So this is under 50. And then this will be for the mayor's budget. So it should be the first set of pages after
Okay,
the actual ordinance. And so I think, I don't know if it's the fund or what, but it's 311 under other services and charges.
perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
This is the 75,000.
Yeah. So I would want to understand the differential on that, and then what factors are currently being paid after that to say that there is a forecasted need of an increase of 15,000 going into 2021. I also was unsure of what, hold on, I wrote it down. There is a department that is referred to as, I lost my notes, y'all, so hold on, I'm gonna have to
It's okay.
find it. Supportive Services. And it says Department 258 Supportive Services. Of course, it's under the general fund. Could you explain what exactly goes under that particular department?
These are the civilian employees for the police department.
Okay. Because it was only salaries, that's why I asked.
That it's only salaries in 2051.
Right, okay.
And 2050 is the operating. budget.
Operating budget, okay, I'll match it up.
Twenty 50, I'm sorry.
Okay, hold on, Deputy Chief of Staff increase. Oh, I do have another question about a salary increase that was proposed. This was for the Deputy Chief of Staff. Just want to get clarity. So the $70,000 that was already approved, I remember earlier this year, there was an appropriation request that came in from the council to increase that particular salary. So the 70,000, is that included in or not?
There was not a request to increase. There was a change of title for a position. The former name was the Constituent Services position, Constituent Services Director, which paid $70,000. This
Okay.
is an increase.
So the increase is
$5,000.
justifiable based on what?
Pardon me?
So the request to increase $5,000 is based on what?
I think the increase is based on the duties that she performs, which I provided a job description to the council at the time that we were doing the ordinance reorganization. And
Right,
this-
earlier this year. So
Yes, and I think this salary is commensurate with those responsibilities.
okay. So I'm
This
just
is an attempt
questioning.
to set the salary at the level that it should have been set from the very beginning.
So was there an opportunity for you to request that increase at that time that the title change was also done?
At the time, we were not eliminating a position from the mayor's office, which we're doing now. So no, from a monetary point of view, no, there wasn't.
Okay,
Councilwoman Atkins, can I follow up
absolutely.
just real quickly on that line of questioning? So if I'm correct, we never eliminated the Director of Communications position when we made the structural changes earlier this year, but I
That's
don't see it on this budget.
It's not in
Or,
the budget. It's in the media fund.
okay, so it doesn't exist under the mayor's office.
No,
Okay. And is that still there under the
Yes.
media fund?
yes.
It'll be, is it possible to put page numbers on these?
I'll try.
I know we ask a lot, but sometimes it's kind
I'm
of
not
hard
sure
to.
what Excel does. I'll do my best. I know what, the regular, like Word or something does. I'll see.
Right,
I think you have to do it.
right. I'm trying to find the
This might be,
media fund.
I already had trouble getting the pages right, so you might be asking more than my technical abilities will allow.
Okay, and I didn't.
So the media fund budget is under,
The media fund budget is special revenue, and it comes to you next month.
okay,
a
so it's
part
not
of
in
the
this
other
package.
grants and special revenue funds that come to the council for approval.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Please proceed, Councilwoman Atkins. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine. I have a question. Can you explain special revenue, Attorney Cole?
Well, media is a very good example. The dollars that fund that particular fund come from cable franchise fees. So any department that receives dollars, or any department that is funded with dollars that are not tax dollars, that's special revenue.
Okay,
So in the budgets that will be coming before you, you'll have any other grants that city departments may receive where they need to have monies appropriated. You'll have any department budgets that the dollars come from some source other than general fund or tax dollars. So there's, like, for instance, I mentioned before the rental inspection fees, that's a part of that ordinance. The media fund is a part of that ordinance. Any grants that we have to do, usually state grants, that's a part of that ordinance. All of those funds come to you at that time for budgets and appropriations.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
This is my last question. Trying to learn the process, Attorney Colvin. This is the
Okay,
whole-
no problem.
So if I'm looking at the operational budget for redevelopment, within that budget, I should be able to understand the portion that will be allocated to, for example, like the demolition. Is that true?
Well, no, and the reason, I should say it a little bit more broadly. Demolition is funded from more than one source. So the community development block grant dollars that were appropriated last week, there is an allocation in there for demolition. Sometimes TIF dollars are used for demolition. So it's in a lot of different sources.
So at this time, how could I find out what we have projected to use for demo for 2021?
I can provide that information to you, but I believe it's in the sources that I just mentioned. So I can get that number to you.
Yeah, please. I just
Okay.
want to see the roll up.
Okay.
That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins. Other questions from members? I will ask, I want to go back to the sale leaseback repayments, because I recall those being somewhere around $3.5 to $4 million a year in total. Now, I know that there's interest and so forth, but the term, at one point it was 20 years, then I heard 15 years. It's 20 years, is that 20 years, I believe is the term
Mhm.
for it. And so I guess the question I have is that when we look at the revenue projections, we're subtracting that $4 or so million that we have to make the payments for. I'm surprised that the intercept is not what's being used. I know that was a big deal for the.
You mean the concept, the actual, the county allowing an intercept?
Right. I mean, I would think
I
that the
believe the
investors
county
would want that.
actually signed an agreement to allow it, but has since decided it won't honor that.
Wow. Which is interesting. And it's probably beyond this conversation, but I'm not blaming anybody, but it just seems like something that the investors and underwriters would be concerned about, because it's on us to make those monthly payments as opposed to them capturing the dollars and then giving us what's left over. And that's not a small lift every month. We have to do it anyway, but it's one thing when you have to write the check. It's another thing when you have to just work with the dollars that you are given. Is there any penalty for late payments, or I'm sure there is now that the terms have changed?
No, there has not been. We've always made the payments on time. So if there is a penalty, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Okay.
It usually is pretty quickly turned around. As soon as we get the dollars, we wire the money right back out.
Gotcha. And in terms of the casino revenue fund, I know there were some questions earlier in the year about the extent to which we were getting dollars from the casino. Obviously, they were closed for at least 1 quarter or 3 months of the year. Have we received any payments from the casino, and how are we looking in terms of projections for the remainder of this year and next year? How certain do we feel in the projections we've gotten from them? I know what the contract says, that they must do it. However, I know that people do breach contracts.
We have been receiving dollars since, I'll say July, since they reopened back in, I think it was June 15th.
Right.
So of course the dollar amounts are down. I can provide the report for you so that you can see how much we're actually receiving. And in fact, I believe the actual dollar amounts may be in the documents that we provide to the council on a monthly basis.
15th, right.
Mhm.
Because part of the concern or question that I don't think Councilman Lay is on, but one of the issues that he and I kind of talked about during some of the meetings is, the way the contract reads is shall, right? I think it's shall or must, regardless of their economic situation. I believe it's roughly $6 million or so as the minimum that they would have to provide. And the question is, do they wait till the end of December, or should those be coming in on a quarterly or monthly basis? And so I guess my question is, we know what the contract says. Do we feel that they're on pace to make that $6 million commitment, to be whole on that by the end of this fiscal year?
At this point, because the casino revenues are lower than they have been in the past, we're not on pace to get $6 million by December, I don't believe. However, even in the past, when the casino was not bringing in or did not bring in the projected amount per month, December and January were the months where they would true up. So in that respect, the process is not any different than it's been in the past. I guess mostly, all I can say in general is that the amount that we're getting at this point is based on the reduction in actual participation in the casinos because of COVID. So, but we have been getting monthly revenue.
Excellent. And I guess if they were not able to do it, we could, we're factoring in the full 6 million for our revenue projections for 21, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
because they're legally obligated to give it to us.
right. Any members have any other questions or comments? Are you, you're muted.
I just had a quick question. Where are we in terms of the fire department with the overtime? I read an article in the paper the other day that the fire department is getting, well, they're accruing an awful lot of overtime. And so I don't know if that's creating a problem for the budget for us. And that's what I'd like to know, if that is in fact the case.
We're using, as we have done in the past, the vacancies in the various departments to cover overtime. Yes, they are running a higher level, I'll say, of overtime, given the circumstances in the department, lack of staffing, people being out sick, that kind of thing. And I think the fire chief has talked about that in previous meetings before this committee. But at this point, we believe that we'll be able to cover our overtime expenses. I've been attempting to hold the line. As I said, some of them think I am a taskmaster, but I'm trying to make sure that we try to stay in our budget as much as we can.
Can I ask a follow-up to Councilman Brown's question?
Yes.
So we have $500,000 budgeted,
Yeah.
and you're saying we take from unfilled positions to deal with the remainder. What would we say? I forget the number that was given at our last committee meeting, but I think it was, I may be way off, but $800,000 or $900,000 already year to date.
Yes. Yes.
So are we roughly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say yes. And generally, since we've had vacancies the way that we have them now, we've been able to cover the overtime with those vacancies. So yes, it'll be close to $1 million. It'll be $1 million.
So if we aren't able to solve this problem, which is a long-standing challenge, next year,
You mean in terms of filling positions?
well, that and the amount of overtime, right, that accrues. So if we're talking about basically $1 million, I guess my question would be, if you have a million, is probably going to happen again next year, then you might get it down 100,000 or so. But trends don't tend to change that dramatically in government, especially in terms of changing policies and so forth. But if we were to even just say $1 million minus the 500,000 budgeted, that leaves $500,000. So when we say we're going to pull from the unfilled positions, how many unfilled positions are we talking about? And I guess what would be the salary or the amount for each of those? We would need at least
The
10.
firefighter positions are at 49,000. I think the fire chief is on as well. I believe he's on. They're at 49,000. And keep in mind also that there is overtime that's also budgeted in the COVID money, as well as so we can use that as well. One of the things that he's done in the 2021 budget is to convert some of his higher ranking positions to firefighter. That will allow him to hire more people to fill in the gap so that we won't have to use as much overtime. So that's one of the strategies that we're using to try to reduce overtime.
Okay, by having more people who are at the ready to work, we're already paying them anyway.
Yes.
Okay. How are we doing in terms of competitive pay? I know that's a challenge.
That's a real challenge. That's
You're right. And I know at some point, I hate to say it, but I think it's the reality, we're going to have to look at raises for police and fire in order for us to remain competitive, because we've already lost even some of the new recruits who came over this summer. We've already lost some of them. And so at some point, we're going to have to, for police and fire, offer whether it's down payment. I saw East Chicago is doing down payment assistance. There might be some softer things that we can do, if you will, that won't be a direct hit to the city. But I'm hopeful that in our 22 budget or 23 budget, we really have to look at putting more dollars, and maybe even this year. And sometimes it may not be a huge increase, but a gesture to show that we're keeping up with the cost of living. And based on the consumer price index and other factors, we know that, there was a raise, I think, was that 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago?
A little longer.
Longer than that, right? And they were already way behind then.
Right, and that is an issue. You're absolutely right. One of the things I did want to point out, though, is that there is a home buyer assistance program funded through community development that is certainly available to public safety officers that they can use. So our hope is that we can beef that up so that we can provide additional dollars. And that's a source that's not in the general fund that we would be able to use for something like that.
And we could just put it in our, Councilwoman Brown?
Well, the home buyer assistance program, is that just for homes in the city of Gary? Is that just for
That
homes-
program, yes. But if we
Okay.
actually supplemented the program, which I guess we could supplement it with other dollars. So that would certainly increase the amount of money that might be available. But that's something that we'd have to look at, Councilwoman, because one of the things we are trying to do with these programs is to encourage home ownership in the city
in
of
the city of Gary? Okay.
Right.
I did want to, Ms. McLaren here from the Fire Commission, her microphone isn't working, but she did put a message in the chat. I wanted to read that and give you a chance to respond. She says, I would like to know what are the 5 part-time positions in the fire department budget? Gary doesn't have part-time spots, as I know, and the raises given to the division chief, EMS billing supervisor, supportive service manager, when firemen are not getting raises and money is needed to hire firefighters. I wanted to offer perhaps you, and I see that Chief O'Donnell is on as well, an opportunity to respond to that comment.
She says 5 part-time positions?
In the fire department budget, let me go to
Yes,
the,
I'm looking at it. And maybe that was one of the corrections. But
here. Chief O'Donnell, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to chime in here?
Sure. Hey, good evening, Councilman. How are
Good
you?
evening.
today? Yeah, I'm not aware of any part-time positions. We don't have any part-time positions. I can tell you that. So how that got in there.
if it was in there, it was an error. And that
Error,
was
yeah, because we
one of
don't
the
have
things
any.
that we corrected.
Yeah, 'cause I don't see any part-time in the general fund salary budget.
No. Yeah, no, sir. We don't have any. So however that got put in there, that would have been an error, a mistake.
She says it's at the bottom of the fire department budget. Oh, I see. It says the part-time
Oh, I see.
subtotal.
Okay.
It has 5 at 224. Well, it's reduced from
Oh, so she found
224.
another error. Okay.
224, 415.09 to 142,000 for 21. What are those 5 part-time positions?
I believe it's something that we took out. I will check our calculations, sir. I hadn't noticed that.
The number went from 5 to 3.
Mine still says 5.
Mine said 3.
Which one, do you have yours as amended?
Yes, I believe it's the minute. It's the highlighted one that I'm looking at. I don't have
Because
it.
we don't have any in the body of it, but I'll look at the total at the bottom.
What is your, Attorney Colvin, does yours have 5 or 3?
Oh, gosh. Hold on.
This is,
Mine says 5.
at the email.
But I
That was
will
the
look at
original
that
one.
because that
It's
shouldn't
not
be.
as amended, or is it?
It must not. I don't have the time.
Okay, so we should find out what that is.
Yes, because we don't have any part-time positions in the budget, so that's an error.
Okay,
Are you looking under where it says part-time subtotal?
yes.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious, maybe Charlotte, when she was doing her math, in the changes of what we were trying to save in our budget, but yeah, she
We'll
didn't
look
add
at
any
that.
part-time. Yeah, no problem.
Based on information that we received from her, that the chief hired a Gary Hobart firefighter who was retired as a vendor to consult the fire prevention and train officers. And the contract is from May 1st to December 31st. And the position pays $36,000 for 6 months. So, I don't know what that is.
I did get that message as well, Councilwoman Brown. And I think it was, you want to shed light, Chief O'Donnell, on what
Yeah.
exactly that involves?
Sure. I think at the beginning of the year, the city was looking at possibly hiring an outside firm for like $50,000 to do overhaul the fire department, look at all the areas we have gaps and things like that at. And one of the things, our EMA plans, are a lot of our planning with fire prevention, community risk reduction, emergency management, not just, fire prevention. Our emergency management plans are about 15, 20 years old. And we hired on a contractual basis, only on a contractual basis, Mr. Jim Jarris, and he is the retired assistant chief out of Hobart. And one of his responsibility or doing is redoing our EMA plans. He wrote a grant for us. He's a grant writer. So we've just received a $5,000 grant from NIPSCO that he wrote. So as we try to get grants from different agencies to get equipment and, other necessary needs that we might not be able to get, he's writing our grants for us. And there's, some other things that, he'll help out with, as we ask him or contract with them. He just did our, our SOP for civil unrest. We didn't have an SOP for whole civil unrest. So he wrote the civil unrest PowerPoint. He also wrote a grant for us to obtain ladders. However, because we weren't in the system with the state of Indiana, we were not able to apply for that grant at the time. And then he also he does FEMA work. He's a FEMA master exercise practitioner. And what that does is we can do certain like tabletop exercises and other exercises that will allow us to apply for federal grants too, as the grants come available.
What line item is this? I would imagine this is under the operating. This is out of professional services.
It would be under professional services.
Professional service, right.
Okay, so this is wait a minute. So under the fire department general fund, correct?
But he was being paid out of 2020 money.
Oh, I see. But there's no money in the comparison. I'm trying to see, is there any professional services for 21 to support these activities?
Trying to get my right together here.
I haven't asked yet.
I don't see any in the 2021 budget.
So yeah, on the professional services, I don't see anything blocked off.
We have some money, I believe, in the 463 account, I believe, but we use the monies in the 101, 290 for other salary expenses, I believe.
So the current 2020, if you will, where did that come from? Where is that coming from?
There was money in the professional services line item in 2020.
Okay, so we're going to put that in there. under the council approved budget for 2020 as a point of
Not in,
comparison?
it's not, it's, I'm sorry. If it's not in there, we should.
So that's 311, right?
So is the
Yes.
chief saying that he's gonna need those services going into 21, or he just need them up until the end of this year? No, that needs to be the question.
And I'm looking at my 4.
Chief O'Donnell, you want to respond?
Yes, sir. Right now, I'm gonna have to follow back up on that, but yeah, if we're applying for grants and things, because it was brought, I did ask, we didn't have anybody within the department or retired to be able to write grants for us and do some of the other work, EMA plans. Like I said, I'm not an EMA manager, and either were some of my former chiefs. So of course, our plans have been behind for many years with the city. And
So I have-
so
I'm sorry.
that's one of the reasons why I will probably need him next year. But that just depends.
Then,
But he's only paid on what we use him for. If he's not used, then of course he's not getting paid any.
And
Chair.
Councilwoman Burns Caldwell and then Councilwoman Atkins.
Chief O'Donnell,
Hi, good evening.
hi. On the contract, it says training, and I was told that officer, I'm sorry, whatever his title is, James Morrison, he does the training. So what type of training is Mr. Jervis doing?
James Morris. You talking about James Morris?
Yeah.
James Morris just does. He's the EMS director. That's EMS training.
Okay. I know, I'm just looking at some of the stuff that was in the contract.
Oh yeah,
He
Mr.
said
Jarrett.
that he did it already, but you put it in the contract with Mr. Jarvis. And let me ask you, did Mr. Jarvis get a business license with the city of Gary for that contract?
Ma'am, I will not give you an answer that I don't know. I'm not positive if that's a
I
requirement.
don't know that that's required, Councilwoman.
Okay, I'm just asking because I know that most, like our contractors that we have, don't they have business
The
license?
contractors do, but generally, a lot of our professional services,
They don't have to have one?
no, and many of
Okay.
them are not, Gary businesses, no.
Okay.
And I just want to also let you know that there is professional services money in the COIT budget, 463.
Okay.
Oh,
But I
okay.
still need to make an adjustment in the 2020, what was approved in 2020 for 101,290.
And I guess I would just ask Chief O'Donnell, and maybe you too, Attorney Colvin, is there I guess the concern is who's having access to these opportunities at a certain dollar amount. I think that's what I'm hearing in terms of then our local folks, whether they're retirees or current members of the fire department, if that's even possible, are they given an opportunity to apply for these contracts or pursue these contracts? Or is this at the sole discretion of the chief? And, is there over a certain dollar amount, are people given a chance? Does it have to go out for bid, or what's sort of the process for that?
Well, professional services under Indiana law is not required to go out to bid.
Right.
So certainly you can just simply solicit a scope of services and, your costs from whomever actually provides those kinds of services. With regard to this particular situation, this is very specialized. So the only entities only individuals that would really be able to provide this service would be someone who had already worked in the area. That would be the circle of people that you would ask. This is not like just a firefighter off the street. This is emergency management where you've actually been trained. And in this particular case, this consultant was actually teaching this particular in this particular area. So I thought that we had gotten ourselves a bargain given his background and his credentials.
Mr. Chair, I had a question. I think I remember this particular role being a discussion point in front of the council earlier this year. But I agree. I remember Attorney Colvin and also Chief O'Donnell stating the specialized services this individual was supposed to bring. And I thought it was more so specific to training and environmental management. I think I just heard Chief O'Donnell mention grant writing as well, that this person has done more. And I could have interpreted that wrong, but a lot of the outputs that you just said that he has been able to do has been associated with attaining some respective grants. So it seemed as though there might be, and then you also stated that, going forward, you probably will need this person to do other things, whatever else comes up. So I think for the council, it would be better for us to understand what is the scope of in terms of the role, because it seems as though there might be some scope creep in terms of what was presented in front of us to justify the role at the beginning of this year, and then what potentially this person might do in the future. The whole whatever part, I just would want to know specifically what additional tasks could potentially come in front of this person that you would want them to address. Does that make sense, Chief O'Donnell?
Yes, ma'am. I think I got it. I apologize, especially being new to this whole thing. So yes, I believe I understand where you're at.
Okay.
So if there's any changes into the professional service contract that we have in terms of additional things, and I don't think I saw grant writing as one of the objectives that will be needed or be done for that person in the contract. I could be mistaken.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not looking at it right now, ma'am. But I mean, that's not a problem if I had to put that in there. I just thought because he's able to offer that service. And last year we lost the grant partly because it was not before he came along. The grant to hire firefighters last year was lost because of some small things that happened on the fire department and plus there was some not confusion, and there was a bunch of people writing the grant to hire the SAFER grant last year, and we did not able to receive that. Plus, we wouldn't have had the money either.
So it's grant writing, it's training, it's also the emergency analytics as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Councilman Brown.
Who was writing the SAFER grant before? We had someone who was doing that. What happened to that person? Because we had someone who was writing that grant. And that's how the city was able to get the SAFER grant, was because someone was writing it. So I don't know what happened to that person.
That was before me. I can't speak on that.
And I don't know either councilwoman who wrote it before. I do know that the grant that the chief mentioned was written, I think, before 2020, the one that he said we had to return. Because someone in the fire department did write that one. But there was some errors in it that caused us not to be able to get it. I don't know who wrote those grants though.
Well, I just want to, hope I'm not interjecting, someone else speaking, but I wanted to follow up on that and just say that to Councilwoman Atkins' point and Councilwoman Brown, I like that term, Councilwoman Atkins, scope creep, right? And I think if there are opportunities where we can split some of these larger grants up to offer opportunities to locals who do some of this work, let's do it. I mean, I don't know. One of the questions I asked earlier this year is how much we self-assess our local contracting in terms of what percentage of the contracts are given to those who are local Gary business owners or Gary residents, and what percentage are going to minority and women-owned business enterprises. I mean, I think we're a city that, like all cities, should be focused on making sure, number one, that to the extent that we can, we want to publicize these opportunities to Gary residents and businesses. And we certainly recognize that there's, in some areas, skill sets and expertise that may not be here. And we have to make exceptions to that aspiration. But I do hope that as we look into this and how much dollars are ultimately put into that, that is kept in mind. I don't know if there's anything that the council can do in terms of MBE numbers and goals and targets for our professional services contracts. I know that other cities have done those kinds of things, and I'll have to rely on Attorney Williams. I know that that's an executive branch function, but at the end of the day, the spending of dollars, right, is starts here, right, in our budget process. And so if we were to have some kind of mandate that a certain percentage target, would need to go to locally owned businesses or minority and women-owned businesses, we definitely need to look at that. And I'm going to ask Attorney Williams to look into that for us. He may have some thoughts on it now, but Attorney Williams.
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely, you're right in both perspectives. It's absolutely an executive function. However, you can pass ordinances that require a certain percentage of individuals seeking professional service contracts to meet that threshold. That would then become the law of the city, and then the executive branch would be charged with enforcing it. So you're correct in both areas. It can be done, but the power is split.
And if we were to, and I'm asking a hypothetical, and I'm looking at Councilwoman Atkins, I know she is a procurement guru, so I'm expecting an ordinance to come from Councilwoman Atkins to that effect. But in any event, if we were to pass such an ordinance prior to the conclusion of this year, how would it would obviously immediately go into effect, and it would affect all professional services contracts thereafter. Even if we approve, it wouldn't. Basically, what I'm saying is the approval of this budget and the creation of that ordinance does not create a conflict, if that makes any sense.
Is that to me or Councilwoman Atkins? I'm sorry.
No, that's to you. Basically, what I'm saying is if we were, let's just say that in November, we created an ordinance that said, I guess from this point forward, right, and that's how that would work, we'd have to meet certain targets. That would simply mean that starting January 1, 21, whatever budget exists, it would be bound, the use of professional services dollars would be bound by that ordinance. That's correct, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think that would cause a problem. Most professional service contracts are not let until late November, early, even late December of this year for the following year. So there would be plenty of time to get the ordinance on the book.
Mr. Chair, let me ask a question. Attorney Colvin, I might have it wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, I thought that Executive Order 2 spoke about procurement practices and our I guess, objectives in terms of ensuring that we had different metrics related to MBE, right? Local hiring in terms of certain contracts. And I thought that it also included professional services. I'm not sure, but I thought that it did.
I don't want to say, I'm not sure, Councilwoman. I thought it did too, but that's something that I can check for you.
Okay, and I know it came up in our budget review meeting on the 22nd of September when we spoke to Ms. Barbara from Public Works, right? In terms of, at this point, where are we performing in terms of hitting those metrics? I know we have not measured anything or tracked it at this point. So I do think the council should do our due diligence and make sure we have something on the books, but I want to make sure this aligned to what, the executive order states as well.
Okay.
So I mean, I can take that lead, in terms of working to propose something for the council to look at. And I'll get that copy of Executive Order 2, because I think we need to make sure that we are diligent about that. Especially as a Black community, we should be advocating for that.
Okay.
Thank you. And I guess one of the challenges, and maybe Attorney Williams should speak to this, is that I know executive orders don't have the same teeth as an ordinance. They're really more aspirational documents.
Right.
I mean, it's basically how the administration wants to govern itself, right? It's policy, but if we have an actual requirement, and Attorney Williams has unmuted himself, so I'm going to stop trying to be the attorney.
I appreciate all the help I can get, given Attorney Lay's absence. You're right. It does not have as much teeth. More importantly, it's easily repealed. It would simply require a new mayor to come in and dissolve that executive order. Whereas with an ordinance, it would be a much more difficult process to repeal the ordinance. So ordinance is absolutely stronger.
Okay.
And I would be more than willing to help the councilwoman with the legal jargon that may be necessary before submitting to the law department.
I was going to remind you of that, Attorney Renza. Of course, based on Attorney Lay.
Okay.
Excellent. Other questions?
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer.
I have a couple of questions here concerning the fire department. I guess I'll start from the top. Chief, I see here on the budget here where there's deputy chief. We have 2 deputy chiefs, and then we have division chief 3. Is there a need for 2 deputy chiefs?
Good evening, Councilman. No, sir. No, sir. So the one deputy chief is retiring right now. So he'll be off the city budget or the payroll by, I believe, April or May of next year. So that position will go away, and I will have just myself, one deputy chief, the division chief, which is considered an assistant chief. And then I changed one position to operations chief, which is in our rules and regulations, where that is a pick of the fire chief, because in our civil service rules, I don't get to pick like the police department can pick all his commanders, or he or she can pick their commanders at all. The operations chief is the only one I get to pick.
And also, looking at the inspectors here, have we looked at possibly using the retirees to do the inspection process? To save dollars?
Honestly, that's a good question. I guess it could raise a couple. I don't think it's a bad idea. However, I also don't know if the union and that would like that, because you're bringing in retirees instead of active guys that might have the certification to go in the bureau. They do an extremely a lot of work, and we've actually cut that bureau over the past few years from where they used to be. That we used to have quite a few people back there. If that's something the city wants us to entertain and the union can be on board, then that might be something that would free up just a couple people. I only have 4 to 5 people in that division right now, and one is retiring.
I only see 3 inside this budget that I'm looking.
Is there 3? Yeah, you're probably right. I think that's. I'm trying to go up and down.
Okay.
On mine.
And the last portion is the increase in salary. I believe there's 3 people in the budget: the EMS, building supervisor, business manager. I'm sorry, not the business manager. Support service. It's 2.
Yeah. You said the division chief. Did you say that, sir?
No. The billing, the EMS billing supervisor.
And division chief.
Okay. Well, the division chief, that was because we're going to only have the one division chief, which I've been doing now. So he asked for his salary because there's the 3 of us, and I cut out the two division chiefs already. So in addition, like right now, I have my deputy chief is on vacation. So the division chief is filling in as the deputy chief along with myself right now. So that's where that bump up, because he's in charge of all of fire suppression, in addition to the other duties he has to perform. But fire suppression, scheduling, and that is his main job every day. Then coming out, after hours for fires like myself and any type of major emergencies. So instead of having the deputy chief, 2 deputy chiefs at $71,000, we just went back to 1 and gave that division chief a little bump up there. because he schedules out, takes care of it, tries to have everything taken care of on the weekends and everything also. For the two positions at the bottom, I don't know if we'll be able to give them a raise, but that is the EMS billing supervisor and the other supportive services manager, which is those two positions, I believe, were at the bottom of the pay scale. So we were trying to just make those both even at, I believe, $45,000 a piece. I think one was at 40 and the other position was at 41 or 42. And we were just trying to make those two even because those two ladies do all the work back, for the billing and that. And they're both the same title. So one makes 41, I believe, right now, 163, and the other makes 40. So I just said 45 for them both because they do handle the same title, supportive services manager.
I guess the question Ms. McLaurin here is asking, and I guess I'd ask it as well. She's saying that the division chief spot is a ranked position, and how can you give a raise to one union member and not the whole?
It is, she is correct, and it is a ranked position. I believe you can, essentially, I guess you can give a raise anywhere. I don't know where she comes up with that. I don't know where it says you can't give a raise to one person and not somebody else. We're not trying to do that, but I eliminated 2 division chief positions. So he is doing the work also, all 3 positions. So there'll only be 1. So that is, we did save money. There was about like $100 and some $1,000 savings.
Gotcha. I had a question. The firefighter, and this is my own ignorance, new to this, transferring to 463, 4630. What does that mean? It's about, I don't know, 10 or 12 firefighters. It says parentheses, transfer to 463-4630.
That's the department for the county income tax.
Gotcha. Okay, so what we were holding
We were
in this,
reducing the number of public safety officers and firefighters in 101 general.
perfect. Thank you. Any other questions since we're on the fire department? Any other questions about the fire department? I did want to ask about this, and I know Attorney Colvin would have the history. I hear various things about parity related to police and fire, and I want to make sure I understand exactly how that works. Is that about salary? To what extent is this parity requirement between police and fire? To what extent does that affect what we do in one area versus what happens in another area? That is to say, what we do with police, how does that affect with what we may have to do with fire as well? And I see Chief Evans is on as well. So, but Attorney Colvin, can you shed light on how the parity discussion works?
And they may want to add something as well. But generally, in the past, the parity issue has arisen with regard to raises because the actual salaries are a little different in each department. So they're not the same. There's not parity between each rank, I'll say. So generally, in practice, has been with regard to raises, with regard to increases, say, in clothing allowance, that kind of thing. I don't know if either Sean or Brian want to speak to something else about it, but it's not required 100% across the board for every category. That's what I mean.
Okay, and this is based on the union contracts.
Yes.
Okay. Chief Evans?
Good afternoon. My understanding of parity is for the entry-level positions of both departments and any supplemental benefits they get, such as insurance payments. You know, if we got, for instance, a 20% break on insurance payments for police, you would have to give the same, and in just my opinion, to the fire department, or like clothing allowance or specialty pay, which is at a certain rate. But it differs between the divisions or the services with our rank. Our rank structures are different, and we have different specialties. So that's my understanding of it.
Thank you. Council members have other questions related to 50 and 51?
Mr. President, last question I have
Councilmember Rohr?
about the fire department. Chief O'Donnell, do we plan on applying for the SAFER grant for 2021?
Sir, I haven't seen that one come out yet for assistance for firefighters grants. And not saying it isn't, but I at least don't have an email on it. And that will depend the next time we apply for a grant for firefighters based on if the city will be able to meet the matching fund or part of the funding that they have to pay. Because as you know, on that grant, and I believe that was one of the problems why we also had to turn it down this year, is that we would not have been able to meet the federal requirements to keep those firefighters. So we would have defaulted on the grant also.
There's a requirement that, a retention requirement on the SAFER grant. And we did not have the funds to make that, add those particular firefighters onto the general fund once that 3-year period had expired for the grant.
Do we see ourselves going in the future having those funds with so many firemen that are up for retirement?
We may.
Changes that we're making, we're proposing to make now, do we see ourselves being able to sustain those 3 years?
We may, but that's something that will require a lot more planning. And I know we can't do it in 2021. So that's one of the reasons why I know that the chief, he may not know it, but I know that we can't apply in 2021. But in future years, I'm looking to do that. It's our responsibility to see whether or not there are other resources that may be available to us that we could tap into that would allow us to utilize grants like that. And that's what we want to do.
I asked that question because our numbers in the fire department as well as the police department are dwindling so fast. And once those numbers get down, we find it almost impossible getting them back up to a number where we thought we can really sustain the department at.
And that's our task, Councilman, and that's what we're working on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. Could I add one more comment, Mr. President?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure if you all received it, and I know Councilman Govan, you always say pardon your ignorance, and it's okay because you're not a firefighter and I'm not a councilman. So I did send out an email. I would like you guys to swing by. I know Councilman Brewer's been around, so he got a little gist of the fire department. But if you guys like to come around just to see and talk to the command staff and also the guys in the station, kind of give you a little better idea, because I hope I'm clear when I give you my answers to things. But if I'm not, or if I'm a little gray, I'd love you to come around to see the firehouses. I did put an email out to everybody to at least you can talk to us and see how we operate to get a better understanding and hopefully maybe answer some questions. So that's an open invite at any time.
Thank you. Other questions related generally to 50 and 51?
Just the last clarification question. I'm just trying to learn here. Okay, Ms. Colvin, I need your help.
Okay.
So I'm looking at redevelopment. Who is the current deputy director for redevelopment?
Carol Purtle.
Okay. And then the director of planning, well, first, okay, this is under community investment. So planning is under community investment though now.
Yes.
Right, okay. So there's a potential increase to the executive director's salary for community investment of $20,000. And then there is, yeah, that's what that says. That's the difference. And then I had a question. So it says director of planning is unfunded. Is that because it's contracted?
Yes.
Okay. And then that funding comes out of professional services?
Yes.
Okay. And so that contract was 6 months as well?
No, they had a year. He had a year's contract.
When did his contract start?
I'd have to look, Councilwoman. I believe it was early on. I don't want to say January 1 because I don't have it in front of me. It was
What's
earlier.
the gentleman's name that's the director of planning?
Pardon me?
What's the gentleman's name that's the director of planning?
Greg Jenkins.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I know who that is. Okay, and then his is a year contract.
Yes.
Okay.
And to follow up on that, Mr. Soria is the director of zoning,
Yes,
right? Okay. I didn't get his residency email yet. Did you send that already?
I thought I did.
Okay. Did anyone else get it? Maybe might be me.
I don't think so.
No? Let me look at my draft folder.
Okay.
Was
Councilman Atkins?
the zoning director, that's a year contract as well?
He's an employee.
Okay, full time. Okay.
Mr. President, Chairman,
Councilman Barnes Caldwell?
I just got a comment. Just going over the budget and looking at various positions. And I noticed that we had a lot of new employees that have raises coming. You know, I've been employed with the city of Gary since 2012. I've been on the council since 2015. I haven't had a raise. And these people have come in this year, and I'm not talking about a little small raise either. Let me turn my camera on so I can be seen saying this.
Let us see it. Let us see it.
We had a epidemic this year, COVID-19. People have lost jobs and everything else. And we didn't have a whole lot of work that was done. And to come in and want to get a $10,000 raise, really? You know, we should be cutting back on some things. We didn't do a lot of work this year. You know, let's admit it. COVID saved a lot of us. You know, so we need to relook at those raises, because I'm just looking at everybody came up smiling, cheesing. I'm getting a raise. You ain't did nothing to get a raise.
I have to.
Thank you,
Councilwoman. I have to disagree with you about working, because I have found personally that it's been harder to work remotely than it ever was in the office, and I don't know that anybody could compensate me for as hard as I've had to work in these last 6 or 7 months. It's crazy. And there are a lot of department heads that fit into that category. It may not be everybody, but there are a lot of people who have worked really hard, because you couldn't have kept things together if people.
Well, you're doing 2 positions also.
Well, even if I had been doing one, it would have been hard to do. My point is, there are some people who are really working very hard. And I think your statement.
And how long have you been with the city?
It's a little overbroad.
How long have you been with the city?
I've been with the city for many years.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
What's your point?
Answer like a lawyer.
Working hard.
Let me take you out of that equation. You've been here many years, many years. You've been here much longer than I have. Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying. I'm referring to some.
All I'm saying is that your statement is overbroad. That's all. I'm not saying that it doesn't fit anybody, but it doesn't fit a lot of people. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, it doesn't fit you. I'm sorry. Let me take you out of that. Yeah, I understand. But yeah, I'm looking at a lot. I said a lot of new people. I did say that in the beginning. A lot of new people came in.
And we made some.
That was one of the reasons we had the initial budget meetings, because we do have a lot of new people. We have a lot of people that we have never seen before. It's like, who is that person? What are they doing? And Councilwoman Caldwell is right. We got a lot of new people. We know that Arlene Colvin has been here forever, and that she does a great job. And she does all.
But I'm not the only person that does a great job.
Well, I know that you do, though. I know that.
All right, Councilwoman Caldwell.
But we got a lot of new people, and I see these people on occasion going to the parking lot, and I'm like, who on earth is that? We don't know them, and we have, and the sad part about it is, nobody has even bothered to try and introduce us to those,
You're muted.
to tell us who they are.
Councilwoman
We don't know
Brown.
who they are.
Councilwoman Brown, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
You may want to restate that.
I'm sorry. No one has bothered to try and tell us who these new people are. I see a lot of new people. I don't know who they are. I have no idea who they are. And no one has bothered to introduce us to them.
Well,
And-
if I'm remiss in that, I apologize, but I thought that you got an opportunity to see them at least at the finance committee meeting. We have some good people.
Some of them,
We have brought
some
on.
of them, we saw some of them. But we don't know them.
What I would say too is that I know we did some restructuring in March, I think, early March, late February, where there were some initial raises and adjustments given then. And so I think, I'm not trying to mansplain at all, but I think what Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is getting at is that now there's another round in the same year, right? Where we already made adjustments earlier this year. And I think that's what some of the concern is around that. That's all I'll say about that. And I hear what you're saying in terms of the work that's been done, but I guess that's a matter of opinion. Other members have questions or comments? I wanted to ask about redevelopment in terms of acquisition. So when the city is buying property from school corporation or private individuals, where are those dollars coming from?
AJ is on. I don't know if he.
Hi, yes, thanks for having me on. Typically, they come from two different sources, either depending on the area of the city, the allocation area, which is commonly referred to as a TIF district, or the non-reverting 474 fund, which typically is where we receive proceeds from sales of property. Those are the two sources for land acquisition.
So where is that, the latter one, the non-reverting 474? That's not something we have.
That's not a general fund budget.
Okay. Is that something you can share with the council? I would like to see it. And also I'd like to see the current dollar amounts in the various TIF funds. Is that something you can send to us?
That'd be something to come from the finance department directly.
Okay. So
as far as the 474 fund, that one is not something you can necessarily, we do create a budget, but it's based on a projection on either sales or acquisition of property. So year over year, there may be very few dollars in there, or depending on if a sale actually occurs, funding going through. There are also obligations that we pay through 474. For example, right now, one of the reasons it was set up, the Buffington Harbor Road project, which is a $10.5 million road project that was a grant from both the EDA and RDA. Those funds flow through 474. And in essence, even though those funds flow through there, they're not actually, how shall you say, funds of the city, because it's a reimbursement. So the grants are given to us by both the RDA and EDA in the amount of 10.5 million, and it goes directly back out the door to pay the contractors for the construction of that project itself. So that's the way for various grants that have been received through the city to be able to kind of move those through, because we are in essence a grantee, and it's not a direct payment from, say, like the RDA or EDA in those examples.
and so, for example, if let's just say that the sale goes through of the Gleason, the dollars, whatever that amount, if it were to go through, hypothetically, it would go, the dollars from that sale would go to the 474 fund.
That's correct.
Okay, and the redevelopment commission 100% controls any dollars flowing out of that fund, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Other members have questions?
President, while we're talking about,
Councilman Brewer?
thank you. While we're talking about redevelopment, I see the Board Up Tech one, it's not budgeted for 21. Did I miss something in the last meeting for the Board Up Tech that has been transferred to another department?
No.
Anything?
Councilman, what we had discussed and in the initial draft of the budget, we had put a note in there describing what the change occurring was. So in essence, because that we hired a new person for Board Up, however, the person that was formerly and it's in the CDBG budget, so you won't see it in this particular ordinance because it's part of the CDBG funding for the demolition department. We had another situation similar to the fire department where someone was retiring, and because of their sick time and sick leave, we weren't able to automatically hire the new person into that position this year. So in essence, what had happened, we hired them under the Board Up Tech, and then in January 2021, the person who is currently in the Board Up is going to move into the demolition inspector position in the CDBG budget, and the Board Up technician will cease to exist in Redevelopment's 101 budget. But they will still continue to be doing both Board Up activities as well as the demolition inspections, helping out with the demolition coordinator, Cedric Kirkendall.
All right, thank you.
Other questions, members?
No, but I do have a comment
Councilman Brown?
as it relates to Board Up, because I get a lot of calls from people who are asking about Board Ups, and I call redevelopment and ask for Board Ups, and I was told at one point that there was not a person, that they did not have anyone who was doing that. So if they have someone now, I'm real happy about that, because they didn't have anybody. And I'm getting a lot of questions or a lot of comments from my constituents who want properties boarded up, and I don't know how to get it done. So now that you have somebody, I'm happy about that.
Sure, yeah, and if we receive any calls, and I know you'd called about a particular piece of property a month or so ago, and we had that taken care of, I believe within 48 hours. Now that we have a person back on board, certainly if anyone has any questions about properties to be boarded up, Carol Purtle, Deputy Director, manages that side of redevelopment, and certainly can help coordinate with Cedric and Donald to make sure that we're addressing those areas that need attention.
Councilman, I thought you were about to say something.
Mr. President,
Right.
it's not about redevelopment. Whenever we do with that, I would like to
Okay.
public safety.
Okay. Any other questions for redevelopment?
I have a comment.
Councilman
But
Brown?
I do want to say, Carol Purtle in redevelopment, she does an excellent job. Whenever I call her and whenever we need something, she always takes care of it. So AJ is absolutely right. Carol Purtle does an excellent job. So I just wanted to say that, she does a good job.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I agree with you 100%. She's a great asset for the city.
Mr. President, I have one question for AJ.
Councilman Witherspoon?
Yeah, AJ, this is just kind of off the budget a little bit, but is it true that redevelopment has obtained the Edison School and Ivanhoe School?
Yes, that is correct. At last week's redevelopment commission meeting, we accepted both Edison School as well as Ivanhoe School. There are, I believe, 6 or 8 additional properties from the school city that they've agreed to deed over to the city. And we will be working with the various stakeholders and partners to figure out what's the best reuse for the schools. One note that the school made as part of the agreement to transfer to the city was that a school could not be built or used on the former school properties. So we'll have to figure out new uses for those properties in the future.
Do you have any plans? One of my pet peeves, do you have any plans for securing those schools? We're talking about board up. I know that's an awful lot to board up when we're talking about Edison. But
we're currently working through that right now because we know security is, and people getting into the derelict schools is a huge issue. I mean, we have a similar issue with the city church in downtown, and we've had to board it up numerous times. So yes, that is something we're working on. We're also working on a demolition strategy as well. And we hope to have that completed as soon as possible and get that effectuated.
Thank you.
President,
Councilman Brewer?
talking about the schools, and I didn't know that redevelopment had acquired some of the schools. I know our former fire chief, Paul Bradley, had talked about training for exercises going on and using surrounding community fire departments of that nature, using abandoned facilities to do training exercises. And after the training exercise, they would tear those facilities down. Is there a possibility that we can reach out to see if there's a possibility to still do something of that nature there, so that way we can get rid of the eyesores that we're now collecting ourselves?
It would be a possibility. However, before we do that, we need asbestos assessments on those properties, because we wouldn't want to send anybody into them without knowing that. And we actually had, before we transferred both Edison and Ivanhoe, Deb Backus in our department was working through the RDA and NERC, and we had received a grant for environmental phase ones on both schools. And once we have those reports, they should have a better idea as far as what, if there's been any asbestos abatement in them. However, even if the fire department do complete training in those, the structures are so substantial that it'd be, no matter what they did, it'd be difficult to, the level in which they would destroy the building wouldn't be significant enough to, demolish them themselves. So that would have to be a separate contract to do those. And in both of those schools, I already have estimates on what it costs to demolish them, and they're about $500,000 each. So, the best case scenario would be have someone else pay for the demolition, if that be a future development. However, if that's not the case in the near short term, we have to look at allocating resources for demolition. And as the council is very aware, those funds are limited. I mean, I believe our overall CDBG budget is around $300,000 or so, and that is the primary source currently for demolition funds. We also have some funds to the unsafe building fund, but that's in the less than $100,000 type of range. We also partner with the county commissioners to effectuate some demolition, but it is a conversation to determine prioritization and how we ensure that there's security or demolition so that we don't have any further issues on those properties.
One thing I don't hear a lot of talk about anymore is the hard to hit fund.
Those no longer exist.
Yeah, doesn't exist, Councilman Brewer.
When did those funds stop existing?
Say that again?
When did those funds stop existing? Because I thought we had X amount of dollars that was up.
We did, and those were primarily for residential properties, I believe exclusively for residential properties. And they were, I believe, and Arlene would know better than I, they're awarded through IHCA, and the source of the blight elimination funds were basically the interest paid from the TARP payments from the financial bailout in 2007, 2008. And the program originally was set to expire at the end of last year. It was extended into this year, and we've expended the funds that we had allocated to us. And I don't know if you've heard anything else additional, Arlene, but from what I understand, there's not going to be any additional blight elimination funds for demolition.
I have not heard that we were going to have they were going to have additional funds in this particular program, but we did expend the dollars that we had identified properties for, and it was for residential only.
And
President.
Well, also, I know when we passed several years ago inside the city, we passed an ordinance. So if you have a fire inside of a business or commercial or residential, that the city can make 10% of the proceeds from the fire claim. Where we at with that, I requested that a couple of meetings ago, council meetings ago, and haven't heard anything about, where we at, how much dollars do we have in escrow at this time. I even point out one particular building that was on Broadway, an old auto shop that was there, a body shop that was on Broadway, they caught fire. Where we at with that?
As far as collecting those from fire damages when we complete demolition,
Yes.
I would, this is the first I've heard of the inquiry. I'll touch base with Carol and Cedric this week and get that information. But I do know that we have received funds in that regard, but they're, $10,000 or $5,000. They're not substantial sources of income.
Well, I was
Mr. President.
for a commercial structure, and I'm going to call name Herman Body Shop. You would think of a business that would be a substantial policy that would be there, and 10% or whatever it is should be definitely sufficient to tear something like that down out of the time it's been burnt up and nothing has happened to that facility.
We'll check for you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Councilman Williams?
Yes, thank you. AJ, I'd like to know, there is a particular school that wasn't listed in G610 in my district. It's an elementary school for demolition, Milton. Do you have any idea what you're going to do with that school? Because it's like walls caved in. If you walk by it, you can smell all kind of gas and things of that sort.
Can you say which school that was again? I didn't hear you.
Milton School, it's off of 47th and Pierce.
Newton School. I don't believe that was on the list of parcels the city was going to acquire from the school city. However, I would have to check with the building department to see if it was on the list that they did the unsafe building hearing on and required that the school city demolish it. Because I do know the school city, through the legislative action downstate, had freed up funds from their existing debt to allow for school upgrades and demolitions. So we certainly can coordinate it with the building department and the school city to see if what the status is on that particular school.
Okay. Do you know how soon I can get back to you on that?
I'll follow up with you offline tomorrow, and I will reach out to Dave Stauff tomorrow as well in the schools to see whose list it's on.
Okay.
Mr. Bittner, is it possible you can send us a list of all the schools that the city obtained?
Well, as of right now, there's only two.
Just two?
Correct. Ivanhoe and Edison.
Okay.
But in terms of those you anticipate, is it possible to send that list?
Yeah, absolutely. I will track down the most recent parcel list that we had sent Bessie Davis.
So the city did not acquire Ernie Powell School?
No.
AJ?
Not at this time, and I don't believe that's on the list either.
Okay.
I believe that's the housing authority that acquires Ernie Powell.
Housing Authority Court? Okay. Okay.
Any other members for redevelopment? All right, Councilman Brewer, you want to talk about public safety?
Yes, as far as the police department, I just want to know, is there anything in the budget to do anything with technology, cameras, not so much of body cameras, because I know our situation with body cameras, but actual cameras throughout the city? Is there anything in the budget to support anything with cameras throughout the city?
I'll let the police chief answer that.
No, sir. There's nothing in this budget to address. And if I hear you right, you said not body cameras. So you mean cameras, pods like that you have throughout the city and you can observe or see anywhere else. There isn't anything in this budget for that. However, we will have an opportunity very shortly to reallocate some cameras that we own if you recall that the Gary Housing Authority acquired $2 million worth of cameras, placing them in Dory Miller, Ivanhoe, and several of their high rises. And since that time, based upon their new profile, some of those cameras can be reallocated. When they did the purchase of them and allowed us to monitor them by the contract that we signed or the MOU that we signed with them from the city, those cameras over attrition over time become the property of the city of Gary. And with them demolishing some of those developments early, I have spoken to the director of the Gary Housing Authority, and they want to transfer those cameras over to the Gary Police Department, i.e. City of Gary, a little quicker. There are several dozens of them, and more to come online as they demolish and get rid of some of their properties based upon their projections. The cameras I'm speaking of are outdoor cameras and available to us, and we already have some monitoring. It will take some additional funding, and we don't know how because we can't assess it until we have it, to reallocate them to other parts of the city, get the proper data hookup so that we can absolutely observe and monitor the cameras from the police department. And that will be done in the old dispatch center. So currently we have an ability to monitor the cameras from the entire Gary Housing Authority property, every one of them, including their high rises. So that would be a way that we could possibly have cameras throughout the city. We haven't researched the pods, if I'm correct on what you're talking about, like they have in other cities, to place throughout the city.
Yes.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Councilman Brewer?
Yes.
And maybe this is something we should all research. I know that the license plate readers, the shot spotters, all this technology that's out there would certainly help us with the rising crime, violent crime that we are experiencing. I think we're 40% higher year to date this year than compared to last year in terms of shootings, and all of us are alarmed and have been reading about it, hearing about it, seeing it. And so is there a way in which we can start projecting how much it would cost to make these investments so that we might even have a plan, a 2 or 3 year plan to say, okay, in 21, we want to do this or get this much data storage. In 22, we want to do that so that we can tear this out and begin to make those budget priorities. We know we can't necessarily do it all at once, but if we can have a plan, then we can slowly but surely implement it and beef up our technology. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
I do, actually, and that's an excellent question, and thank you for asking me because it gives me an opportunity to speak a little bit further. So we did procure a license plate reader with our COVID grant funds, which we just had. We were between the standalone license plate reader, which would just be at one intersection, or one that we can place on cars, which is how most smaller departments are doing it. So we do have that. We also do have cameras throughout the city currently. I will not say where, but we do have them. And we do utilize that footage in certain, and we pick the areas based upon the data that we receive. We analyze the data from the previous year on our shootings and homicides. Also, we did partner with NIPSCO last year for a program called ShotPoint. ShotPoint is similar to ShotSpotter, but it's a much less cost-heavy program, and it provides pictures. So ShotPoint we have in 2 areas of the city, and what it does when someone fires a firearm, it allows us from the police department to actually not only find out where the shot was fired, but it continuously takes photos of the incident in any type of light or weather. And we currently have that in 2 areas of the city. It was about a $75,000 program, and NIPSCO paid for it. We actually are using that data now. It's working a little bit better. I remember last time I talked to you, Councilman Brewer, I told you that it wasn't working well. And actually the next day we received some data for it that looks pretty good. And that's coming into what you're talking about using technology to help some of our shortfalls, Councilman. We could analyze those things, and I'll be glad to get those to you as far as trying to have a 3-year plan to get maybe a pod system throughout the city for cameras, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. Some of our neighboring places do it, as well as some of these other available technologies and how we can utilize them to help us affect crime.
I asked that question because I know of someone that's in that field there. And I would ask if he will put a prototype together. I know he's doing some work inside the city where he's already lended some cameras to the city. But I would ask for if he will put a portable prototype together where you can use, Chief. And I definitely like the idea of us, with Councilman Garber talks about seeing exactly where we at, how much these things will cost, because the council, at all budgets we can increase, it definitely is public safety is one we can increase. And I think we look towards the technology piece at this point will be a plus for the citizens of the city. Thank you.
Chief Evans, it's Councilman Williams.
Yes, sir.
We, I know you and I met recently. So the data you're talking about from the, it's not the ShotSpotter, what is it called? The other one?
ShotPoint.
ShotPoint. So you're saying you're receiving data from that, because during that meeting you said it really wasn't working that well. So it's working now?
So I did say that. So the technology for ShotPoint is proprietary, meaning that it's their own technology. It is different from ShotSpotter, and they developed it. It was originally developed for schools, for indoor activities, and now they've, for the benefit of the council, they've tried to put it as an outdoor system where it can work in all weather, and it has not worked up until now. We met, and I told you that, and I was absolutely being truthful with that. But since that time, we have one case which we're working currently that it may be useful. They've been working on it diligently, trying to tweak the software so it'll work properly. And if it does work, that will be a great system for us to look at. I would like for everyone in the council to come take a look at it and what it provides, because unlike ShotSpotter, and I'm not touting any system, I'm not trying to advertise for anyone, it provides pictures. And in criminal prosecution, I'm sure all the lawyers on the line will say a picture's worth 1,000 words, as opposed to some data talking about where a shot comes from. And I would be happy to get the council in very short order some projections of how we can allocate cameras and technologies throughout the city to try to give us a system of cameras and pods so that we can probably better serve our officers and our citizens by giving them a better tool.
Okay.
And Chief, I just want to ask one last question. As far as the cameras, particularly at the service stations there, how has your response been to making sure that the cameras are quality pictures? And would you recommend that we may do something different where we put an ordinance together where we have all service station live stream to the police department? Is that something that you think would benefit the police department? Therefore, you're not sitting waiting on an owner to come in. Sometimes the clerk is there, they're not able to get the information up in a timely fashion where you can already have that at your fingertips at the station.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So currently, with the current ordinance that we have for businesses that are open after 10 p.m., many of the gas stations have excellent quality video and excellent video that we can get. The problem is, as you say, sometimes the on-duty clerk or even the manager doesn't actually know how to operate the system. And that's just not even for gas stations. That's for restaurants and others. In fact, I have a group of officers going tomorrow to gather video from a local restaurant for a case that we have. And we would love to evaluate that and get you our perspective on it, so that maybe all of the owners can do some training with everyone, or like you say, live stream it. The issue that I see, and I'm not a technical person with live streaming, is that many of them have diverging systems. They're not the same. And I don't know what the requirements are for them to get it. Some of them have streaming capabilities where some owners can actually look at it on their phones, yet they don't know how to download it. Some are actually still using DVD players. They would have to upgrade those. But for the gas stations in particular, they actually have excellent footage. But the problem is getting people or employees and even owners to know how to utilize it.
I think it definitely is something that we should look into to further, the security of the city. With manpower being an issue, I think the next best thing we have is cameras. That can be in a lot of different places that manpower cannot be, where you can always go back and review those things. Is there any other questions? Anyone else? Stepped out for a minute. 50 and 51. Councilman Brown? That concludes 50 and 51 for tonight. What's our next one we have? Budget?
Okay, then we have 57. Transfer of funds to the general fund.
You're muted there.
I'm sorry.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
CPO 2020-57, which is an ordinance authorizing a transfer of funds within the general fund for the Garrett Common Council, sponsored by the Garrett Common Council. And I don't have the ordinance. I thought I had it.
Here, I have it here.
You have it? Okay.
Yes, this is $16,000 being moved from the City Council General Fund, machinery and equipment, being transferred to other supplies in the amount of $5,000 and professional services in the amount of $11,000.
Right.
Any questions?
Mr. President, did we make the change?
Open.
The prepare by?
Yeah, that needs to be changed because it still says Garrett Common Council staff. And so I don't think anyone from the law department is on, but I know that Ms. Williams is on. And so I will ask her to ensure that the law department passes review on this and that they are interjected, whether it's Mr. Pohl or Mr. Jenkins. It says reviewed by Mr. Jenkins. And so
Okay.
is that Attorney Williams?
Councilman,
I'm sorry, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Ms. Williams? Ms. Williams, then Attorney Williams.
okay, it's gone to the law department, is handling the corrections.
Okay, so it will be made, and it will say prepared by Stephen Jenkins, and we'll eliminate the reviewed by?
Yes.
Okay.
And also make sure it lists the council members and eliminate Councilman Lane.
All right, sponsored by this, the 7 council members other than Mr. Lay. All right. Any other questions about 2020-57? All right, we have 2020-67, which is an ordinance revising 2020 appropriations for the police department operating budgets, Fund 254 auction fund for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31, 2020. Attorney Coleman, you want to provide an overview?
Chief will do that.
Okay, thank you. Chief Evans.
Good afternoon. The 254 budget is our non-reverting fund for providing funds to the police department solely for the purposes of vehicles repair parts, and equipment. At the end of last year and the beginning of this year, it was the preference of the then comptroller for us to only project what we could possibly get based upon the last 3 months of last year. And if we had any additional funds that came in for us to allocate, that we would come back for the council and ask for additional allocations, which is what we're doing right now. These funds go for repair parts, tires, repairing our vehicles, as well as some equipment that we use in the vehicles and in the station. It does not go to salaries or overtime. There is a line item in there for salaries, but that is to pay the individuals who work the auction funds. We have 4 auctions a year, and the auction fund money goes into 254 as well.
Thank you, Chief Evans. Any questions or discussions from council members? Just for my own clarity, and you may have already said this, I may have missed it. Fund 254 is used how? For what is it used?
For repairs to equipment.
Gotcha. Thank you. I just wanted to
and
get clarification on it. All right, repairs. How much do we tend to take in from our auctions on average over the course of a year? I know it depends on how much we're obviously is up for auction, but what is that amount? I see a budget for how the dollars would be used, but do we know what the revenue is?
It varies, Councilman, but I can tell you our last two. We just had two very recently. The one we just had about a month ago, that auction day netted us $35,000. And the previous auction before that was $44,000, which was high for us. We've had auctions as high as $48,000, and we've had them as low as 12 to 16. It just really depends on what we have and what the public wants to purchase. That fund also, our towing fees. I know some of the council is very familiar with the towing fees that we get, and that also goes into that fund strictly for the use of equipment and cars and car repairs. We buy tires with it, the repair parts, so the garage or the city doesn't have to buy repair parts for our fleet.
Thank you, Chief Evans. Any other questions? If we can, I know we've moved on, but I did want to ask one quick question about 50 and 51 in terms of the budget. Now I'm scrambling to find the page again, but the building department in particular, I think Mr. Stoff may have logged off. He's here. He is still here. I wanted to make sure, I know we talked about having 6 inspectors, 1 for each district. I see 5 named positions in terms of the inspectors. And I wanted to make sure that, my district did not have a inspector specifically assigned just to the first district. So I wanted to confirm that we were doing that.
Counselor.
Hi, Mr. Stahl.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The building department does not assign inspectors by districts, by councilmanic districts. You might be thinking of code enforcement.
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm putting you on the hook. Sorry about that. Code enforcement is what I had in mind.
And Millie is on here too.
Okay, perfect. I'm kind of flipping through the pages to try to find that one. I just want to see how we were doing that. I know that some of them are grant funded.
But you do have a code person though, Councilman.
I know they shared one with Morningside, I believe, right?
Yes.
But I know we had talked about having someone solely dedicated to the first district, since we have not had one solely dedicated to us, I think, in 2 years or so.
I'm trying to get the attention of Millie.
We gotta make a table of contents for this thing.
The first district sharing with Morningside, just in terms of area, Morningside is relatively small by comparison to the first district. Is a large piece of real estate. So I would think that first district inspector is covering most of his time on the north and northeast end.
That's possible.
Councilman Godwin.
He might be pulled as well. Councilman Williams.
I'm sorry, President Godwin. We share that individual, Morningside, and you and First District, but he's in your area more so than Morningside. Morningside's a relatively small area.
I'm familiar. But I know we were talking about having 6 code enforcement officers. Because I would imagine there's a 6th district person and a shared situation.
I think we do have 6.
Okay, I'm just trying to confirm it in the budget. This is in 51, right?
my understanding is that 5 of those inspectors are paid out of grant funds exclusively, and that 1 person is out of the general fund. And that would be the one covering 6, First District and Morningside.
Okay,
I
where
thought
is
it
that?
was the other way around. If that person that we're sharing is covered out of the federal dollars and the rest comes out of the city.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think
Mr. Williams.
that's Mr. Starr stated.
So can someone direct me to the right page? I want to make sure I see this with my own eyes. Because I'm just flipping away here.
Councilman,
That'd be on the community investment.
Councilman,
Yes.
can you repeat your question? Millie doesn't have
Oh, I see it here.
audio.
Okay. So with
So,
community
I'm trying to make
investment,
sure
under the community, that's where I was initially. And so we have the executive director of code enforcement, and then we have 5 inspectors who are listed here.
Can you hear me?
So basically, these are the 5 that are,
Those are building.
Yeah, I can hear.
these are building inspectors, is what Mr. Stoff is informing us. So where are the code, is this the one code inspector that's down here? For
It may be.
30,000? Okay,
Yes.
30,450.
That's the one that was added.
Okay, and this is the one just for the first district.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're saying is that there will be a grants budget coming next month where there will be.
Grant's budget was approved at the last council meeting.
And it has in it 5, it had 5 code inspectors in it.
A total of 6 code inspectors.
Can you hear her?
Yes, I think I did. You said there were 6 in the grants budget?
No, in the grants budget, no, it's just 5. And then 1 is in the community investments budget.
Okay. I'm clear. So that one that's in the community investment is for the first district.
That one, yeah, that one is for the first district.
Okay. Not first district and Morningside, just first district.
First district, including Morningside.
So I'm a little confused because why is it then that the 5, you have somebody for the 6th district, correct?
Correct.
So why can't they also cover Morningside?
Because of the census, CDBG only pays for certain numbers, and in the Morningside, they consider that out of the census.
Wasn't it?
It seems inefficient. I mean, those are on opposite sides of town. I drive between the two often in my own work, but
Excuse me, Councilman. Morningside and the Miller area are both for the purposes of the Community Development Block Grant Program outside of the low to moderate income requirements. So that's why this particular position is in the city's budget as opposed to the community development budget.
so now that it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The other 5 districts qualify under the program, so they're in the grant budget. Because these 2 areas don't qualify, that's why it's in the city budget.
Okay, I just
And that's due to income, correct?
right, I understand. But of course, you're just looking at Miller, but you're certainly not looking at all of Miller or other neighborhoods in the first district as it relates to.
We're going
higher
by the
incomes.
census tracts. That's what we have to go by.
So what would it cost for us to have someone exclusive that's only focused on the first? I mean, to me, it seems inefficient for someone to be bouncing back and forth across the city. But if they were just totally focused on it, what would our portion of the dollars have to be in relation to that which grant? Because obviously the code inspector.
Are you saying that what would it cost to have another code inspector?
No, if we kept 6, but if you have 5 already for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th district,
right?
And you're saying that the 6th district person can't do Morningside because Morningside has higher incomes than the rest of the 6th district. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. What would it cost for the city to put in the dollars itself so that that 6th district person's salary is not exclusively coming from the grant? but a portion
So
of
you,
it that's
so you're looking at dividing that person's salary between two sources.
between grant and city. So the city would pick up the portion, right, that otherwise would go towards the grant. Now, I would love to see these census tracts because I don't know how they're doing it, but I think when you go across some of the neighborhoods in the first district, they are not necessarily high income. And we have our huge challenges in a lot of neighborhoods. So I don't know how this is being divvied up. I know there's a particular area in the first district where you have high incomes, but I think we need to look at that. And I think in the spirit of just equity, that each district should have its own exclusive person. And I don't think it would cost that much if you look at the size of Morningside in relation to the 6th district for the city to pay that portion.
Or maybe even a floater, Mr. Chair, because the 4th district compared to area coverage of any other district is substantial. And I know, code enforcement officer Aaron Williams, he tries his best to try, to get coverage. In terms of your census tract, I could send you, I'm not sure if you want to see that, but I could send you what your census tracts are. I know that they cover a substantial amount of area in the 1st district. And they also, of course, one of yours overlaps into the 4th as well. So that could be an issue in terms of the averaging out across your census tracts, because you only have so many, and the bulk of it is covering all of Miller, if that makes sense. And then some of like your Aetna census tracts overlap into the 4th district as well. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it might be like 116 is a census tract back in that area, but it goes all the way back from Emerson area all the way back to Aetna as well, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
But I have that already, Attorney Colvin.
Okay.
We're trying to track the census. So I have the 1st, the 5th, 4th, and 3rd. Those are the only ones that I have outlined by district.
Well, thank you. And I would like to, I know I talked about this earlier in the year, and my predecessor talked about it last year, to see, what would the cost be. I think that, every district, deserves and to have a person solely committed to it. And I also understand that even with the 4th district being so geographically large and expansive, that, this current approach may not necessarily be the most equitable. So I would just like to see some research on how we can make that an exclusive person for each district.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments related to any of the items that we have covered this evening?
Thank you, Millie.
All right. I guess, is there any public comment? We can do that through the chat box. And so if anyone wants to ask a question from the public, you can write your question in the chat box. I don't see any questions. I do know, Attorney Colvin, that I still haven't gotten the email in terms of the residency.
I'm going to have to restart my computer. I don't know.
Okay.
Councilman.
Okay, no problem. So it looks like we've had a very productive meeting. Our public hearing, as you noted earlier, will be on Tuesday at our next council meeting on October the 20th. I trust that we've already properly advertised that at our 6:00 p.m. regular common council meeting. And then we will have a special meeting on November 2nd, Monday, November 2nd at 5:30 p.m. I think 5:00 p.m. 5:00 p.m. To, I suppose, have a final vote on the budget, and if there's any amendments to the budget, to consider those. I guess we could consider those both on the 20th as well as on the 2nd. Okay.
Mr. Chair, was it confirmed that the 30th will be the State of the City address?
Yes, we just don't have a time yet.
Okay.
Need a time and location.
Yeah, we need a time and a location. So you can get that to us, Attorney Colvin?
I can.
Okay. Any other questions or discussions from council members? All right, well, thank you all. This concludes our Finance Committee meeting. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.